It's the accumulation of small decisions that really lands us where we want to be.
Det är avsnitt 86 och ni är så hjärtligt välkomna till podden som utforskar bolagsbygge med ledarskapet i fokus. Jag som leder denna podd heter Psykologin och är VD för marknadsföringsbyrån Viva Media. Vivas ambition är att vara en integrerad marknadsföringsbyrå för våra kunder där vi kan ta hand om helheten av våra kunders marknadsföring. Från varumärket, hur den ska kännas till hur den ska se ut, till annonsering i diverse kanaler eller byggandet av en ny hemsida eller filmproduktion. Så är ni på jakt efter en ny byrå och vill ta er marknadsföring till en bättre nivå, hör då av er. Men jag har aldrig från start bara velat bygga ett bolag eller ännu en byrå, utan jag har velat göra något annorlunda där människan är i fokus i allt vi gör. Jag tror du som lyssnar på denna podd kanske har reflekterat över att jag är en väldigt reflekterande person. Jag skulle också benämna mig som en humanist. Och jag skulle säga att jag vill bygga en plats som är varm, där människor trivs och utvecklas som människa. För jag tror kärnan och principen i ledarskapet bör alltid vara att få ut det bästa av varje individ som man har förmånen att leda. Och det där är också riktat till mig själv och det är den resan jag har podden för att jag själv ska kunna utvecklas så att Viva i förlängningen kan utvecklas. Tiden har gått och jag har snart hållit på i 5 år med denna podd. Och jag är så oerhört tacksam att så många av er, faktiskt tusentals numera, lyssnar på podden. Så tack för att du är med på resan, ny eller gammal lyssnare. Och uppskattar du podden så glöm inte att prenumerera på den och ge oss jättegärna en recension. Det skulle betyda jättemycket. Idag så kör vi på engelska där jag har med mig en amerikansk gäst som är psykolog med fokus på att coacha toppatleter och högt uppsatta chefer runt om i världen. Och det är på tal om det där att få ut det bästa av människan. Jag har följt Dr. Julie länge och jag blev så himla glad att hon tackade ja och att vi fick till det här samtalet som jag tror du kommer få mycket utav.
Dr. Julie Gurner är en psykolog och ledarskapscoach som har väglett och hjälpt flertalet chefer och VD-are i USA att finslipa sina förmågor i några av de mest tävlingsinriktade miljöerna i världen. Hon har de senaste 10 åren identifierat och studerat de rutiner och vardagliga val som har varit avgörande för några av de mest framgångsrika ledarna inom många olika branscher att nå dit de är idag.
Finally, Julie, we made it to the CEO podcast.
Finally, thank you so much for your patience, and I think it's been a real journey to get here, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
And I'm so excited about this because I've followed you for a long time on Twitter, and I love the things that you write, and I love your newsletter. It's quite new, isn't it?
Yes, it's been ultra successful, has been out for only about 2 months. So it's been really exciting to see it, kind of catch fire a bit and become one of the top business newsletters on Substack. So I've been really excited about that.
And for the first time I saw you and I read your stuff and I was like, wow, that's like the modern form of Wendy. And I'm sure people that have seen the series Billions knows which person I mean. And I'm so grateful that you said yes to be in this Swedish podcast. and I'm really excited for this conversation.
As am I. I think that this will be just fantastic. I've loved the conversations you've had in the past, and I feel really honored to be a part of it.
So tell me, Julie, how is like if you can make it to a normal day, what is a normal day for you?
So for a normal day for me, I do a lot of work from home, only because some of my clients are, international. And certainly since COVID has happened, even more people have seemingly been reaching out via Zoom. So my day tends to start very early because of time zones. I tend to have a standing appointment a few days a week with clients in India. And then I have a couple of clients in Singapore. So those either you have to skew very early or very late. And I'm an early person. So my days tend to start early because of time zones. And then once I have those early appointments, usually I take a break for some breakfast, research reading, some exercise, and then I kind of dive into, corporate clients or some other clients, and I wrap with clients on the West Coast just to kind of fit in time zones and think about that. And for a break, I tend to go out. Right now, I'm staying on a farm, so I tend to go and take a walk and look at some horses and do some of those things in my break to just kind of clear my head and get some good thinking in. But that's a typical day for me.
How's that transitions been from the digital and the physical? Do you experience anything different in coaching sessions?
I've been incredibly surprised by how much nuance you can determine through Zoom. I think it would be very challenging if there were no video component to meetings with clients. But I think that it's actually been incredibly effective. I had clients via Zoom in Singapore and other places previous to COVID. I now just have them far more frequently. And I think that people are so used to connecting over that platform now that they've become more organic. It's less stilted and I think more normal for us. So that's been a very seamless transition in a way I couldn't have predicted.
So I always start this podcast with inwards, like kind of soul searching to see what's inside of the leaders I am fortunate enough to interview. And I always ask them, the first question is that, what's the meaning of all this? Why are we here? And what's your worldview on that?
I think, one of the things that I think about with my own worldview and your own meaning, for me, it is really, and I mean, not to get too philosophical, I guess, about this, but to be able to use your own gifts for their highest and best use. For me, I think that something that I've always felt very strong and compelled around were how do I help individuals become, whoever their best self might be. I started off in psychology. I started off pre-med, but then went into psychology because I really felt a connection with that sort of work. Even in medicine, when I was starting out, one of my reasons for that is because I tend to be a very meticulous person who likes to solve problems and integrate information. And there is nothing more complex and to integrate information than, the human mind and how we operate and how we make decisions and how we move forward. But for me, the meaning really is to use the gifts you have for their highest and best use. And I think if you can tap into that, no matter who you are, not only are you doing great work, but I think you're a really happy person because you're doing the things that you're kind of built to do. So for me, that's really the meaning of all of it, is to be able to contribute in that way.
There's a saying, I don't know if you've heard it, that the meaning is to find your gift and give it away.
That's a great saying.
And I love that. How did you find your why? How did you? Is that something that has always been there for you, or is it recently, or is it?
I think for me, I started out very traditionally in psychology prior to, and perhaps I'm aging myself, prior to a lot of the, internet tech company type work that could be out there. And so, I was asked to advise on a product earlier in my career. And as soon as I was asked to advise on this kind of technology product, it was fine. It was good. It was around kind of cognitive load and some more technical aspects around psychology. But the venture firm that was really kind of funding this company, and, there were a few, but, this one specifically said, we have this founder, he's struggling with decision-making, just had a huge kind of infusion of capital and has always been just so on point. But now, something has clearly messed with the decision-making there. Could you speak with him? We don't know anybody else who's in psychology. It's not something that they have, common alignment with. So I was able to kind of go in there and speak with this founder. And immediately, kind of I saw this issue, I saw the problem. And what was so fantastic about it is that we were able to make motion very quickly. So, in a few weeks, this is a guy who's back to normal, back to making his decisions, able to feel decisive and quick and confident in what he's doing. And it was then that I felt like, wow, I understand, when you're using psychology, traditionally, you're using it to bring someone from illness to health. And here you have individuals who are very healthy, very high functioning, very, kind of on their game. And they just have these little tweaks, these little adjustments that if you can unlock those, really help them operate at an incredibly high level. And so being able to spot those and unlock those was something that I felt like immediately I saw incredible potential in, but also something I was very good at because I am a naturally very meticulous, detail-oriented person. So it was a great fit for me. I was incredibly excited. It was after I had that experience, I completely changed the trajectory of my career to begin to take on clients in that direction. Ended up working with a company that had a very significant exit, developed a reputation in that way, and it was just kind of off to the races from there. I was incredibly excited. Felt like I was really doing the work that I was meant to do. And it was like hand in glove. I don't know if you've had those experiences in life, but, there's this synchronicity that happens that you feel in complete alignment with what you're supposed to be doing. And that was that moment for me.
It's kind of finding a calling or something that you just find your spot.
Very much that way. That's exactly how it felt.
You said something there that I've thought about a lot, because before, psychology was kind of for people that was ill, that needed help.
Right.
But something have happened the last years, I would say, that more and more people tend to go to psychologists or coaches. And why is that, do you think? That what has happened?
Yeah, I think that, people have realized, we live in an incredibly competitive kind of business environment. And I think it's become more so. And so people are looking for any edge that they can get. So I think that's one group of clients, right? That are individuals who are incredibly high performers who say, I know deep down I'm capable of more, even though the world will see me as successful. And I'm not sure why I keep bumping against this wall, this barrier. And I think they're looking for how they can just kind of get that bit of edge that maybe other people do not, or unlock that piece of themselves. And they're not really sure how to do that. If they would have known how to do it, they would have done it already. So I think there is that group of people. And then I think that there's also a group of people who are not mentally unwell, but do realize that things like stress and other types of cognitive, stressors and pressures, and we have so much stimulation in our environment that these things weigh on people uniquely. And the responsibilities of some, very significant ways in which we function, especially in business environments, have shifted. So, now you have people who are in their 20s who are getting, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? That's a stressor that is unique, that carries great responsibility. And so how do you navigate, how to operate when you are, kind of, I guess, gifted with so much, but also so much responsibility, and how can you really operate effectively and stay grounded to who you are? I think that's a different thing. And people turn to a lot of different dysfunctional elements to try to cope with that. But I think they've seen benefit in using people, like me, like others, to help them navigate that effectively. We even see that with Alexis Ohanian, who provides funding for a lot of different companies. But I think that, if I'm correct here, and I may not be, but I think he requires that 2% of all funding that is given to companies is used for like founder wellness and founder health. And it's a way of ensuring his investment, because he recognizes the value of things like coaching and having founders make sure that they're checking themselves in that way, but also operating, in the best way that they possibly can.
What would you say in your coaching sessions as the most common questions for founders or successful people that are you're able to help?
I think that one of the things that is probably the most challenging is that, if you are a founder or if you're a business leader, it will require different things of you as the business evolves. And most individuals, we're not built all the time to evolve. We find things that work and we stay in those things, and the business is still going to progress and evolve, and it's going to require us to be different people at different stages of that business. It'll also require that of your employees. And I think that the evolution that you have to go through to be an effective leader at various stages of the company, as well as make the hard decisions that need to be made, I think that's probably one of the more common things that I see is that, what was working for them in the past is not necessarily going to get them where they want to go. And they're really not sure about what adjustments need to be made to get to that next level. And so that's where I think I can be really effective.
So to manage to adapt to new environments or new times or new technology or new thoughts
and new demands, and sometimes to make really difficult decisions. Sometimes you'll have a team that started with you and, the company now is at a very different stage and you've evolved and you're effective in your seat and you're noticing that, employee number 2 is just not able to evolve, not able to cut it at this kind of next level, and you've got to let that person go. And it's an incredibly, the hardest elements about business aren't the tasks, it's the people. The people elements, and navigating that effectively. How do you do that? And how do you let people go that you need to let go? How do you set up systems? How do you make sure that you're, kind of getting out of your own way for the company to do well? Wherever we go, we bring ourselves. And so for all the problems that we have and all the quirks that we have and all the challenges that we have, we'll see them reflected in your business. I think it was the JetBlue founder who said, every founder has the business they deserve. And so, we do say that over and over again, for better or worse.
That's a good saying. Obviously, I'm going to talk a lot about leadership with you, but before we go into that, where do you find inspiration and thoughts and ways to develop?
Oh, great question. So, one of the things that is demanded of me is that I'm able to work with individuals, whether they are an athlete, like a professional athlete, or somebody who is in a startup company, or someone who's working at a, legacy company or firm of some sort. So not only should I be, kind of able to understand those environments to some extent, but also to develop myself, I look to a lot of professions outside of my own. And I think that's been the most effective thing that I've done for my career. I don't follow other coaches. I follow people who are, whether they're entrepreneurs, I follow artists, I follow people who are going to challenge the way that I think, and to kind of keep me fresh. I also am continually reading research. So every day for an hour, I'm reading the newest research that's kind of out there, and I'm spending time, diving into different areas, forming different, putting together different methods that I want to use for common problems. And so I'm always bringing in new information, whether it's from science and from the field, because I want to do what works, but also just being challenged in my own thoughts from people completely outside of my profession who are going to give me a run for my money and make me think twice about maybe beliefs that I have about certain things. I think it's really important to get outside of your own bubble and to expand yourself, because that's where creativity really comes from. True for my profession as well as anyone else.
Is there any book that have helped you or formed you that you would recommend to leaders?
The thing that has been most influential to me and maybe it's not great to say, have not been books, but have been interviews. I watch interviews like other people may watch TV. I want to hear, because the thing that you get with interviews that you don't get with books are sometimes ghostwritten, often ghostwritten. They are, they're certainly very well honed and crafted. Interviews, you get a look at how people are talking about their own journeys about their own obstacles, about themselves. And so, you can watch interviews with whether it's Jeff Bezos or it's, Oprah Winfrey or it's Mark Cuban or it's, some of these real kind of leaders in their industries. And you can even watch them over time. So you can go back. I mean, there's a phenomenal interview with Jeff where he's talking about, and I think it's on the Charlie Rose show, very, very early on in his career as Amazon was just starting. And he was talking about, they asked him, what would you really like to do? And he said, I'd really like to go into space one day. And you can hear the audience laugh. I mean, you can hear them kind of audibly laughing. And then you can fast forward till today, and you can see he's coming off of this, this makeshift spaceship of sort, and he's talking about, we should have roads for industry, and we should have all these centers, and he's saying these outrageous things, and no one's laughing anymore, right?
That's the thing.
It's wild. And so you get to follow journeys. And so, I'll watch everyone from, a president of a pharmaceutical company to an early founder to people who are very well established. And you start to see patterns. And, so for me, I think the most influential things have been listening very carefully to other people's journey. And it informs how I operate. It informs how I think. It informs how I sometimes consult other people. So it's interviews and other people have been incredibly influential in that way.
So let's dive into the subject of leadership. And if I think of myself, and I think a lot of leaders, one of the main things that I want with my life is to fulfill my potential. And I don't know if I ever will do that, but that's always kind of the key goal of my life, I would say. It's start of a new year. I saved a quote from your newsletter, and it's Dr. Gurner. We can put up the link also on substack.com. And you wrote something like this, that settling in life does not settle the spirit. If you have more inside you want to see what you can do, then you owe it to yourself to find out. But those breaks will be grinding, they will wear at you. And I love that. I want to start there somehow to things and keys and thoughts from you of how you can actually fulfill your potential as a leader. What would you say to leaders in that aspect?
I think that, deep down, I truly believe that everyone knows that they are capable of more than where they're at. I believe that deeply. And I think if you are, you know that about yourself, to really start to then go with, okay, well, what am I good at? What are you aware that you're very good at? And to really dig into self-definition over other people's definition of what you want for yourself. Like, this is who I am. This is what I do. That is not contingent on anyone else's definition. And if you can really dig into that, it starts to give you a very strong sense of priority, and it starts to give you a very strong sense of your path ahead. And so when I think about leadership, it all comes down to the self, and that's why it's so personal, is that every person sitting out there is going to define themselves in a very different way. But that self-definition is going to determine everything that comes from that point forward. What you believe you're good at, what you believe you're capable of, what ceilings you see for yourself or don't see for yourself, the sense of priorities you have. I always tell people, if you look at your calendar, you can see your priorities. And sometimes those are very uncomfortable because you'd like to think that your priorities are very different than what you see in front of you. But, so I look at self-definition, to me, is the key to where all great leadership starts, and you move from there.
What puts aside those that actually are able to accomplish and those who don't, would you say?
Right. I think that the difference between average and exceptional are a few things. One is, I truly believe that self-belief is a foundational element to great leaders. You look at any leader that you know of that has name recognition, and none of them are, doubting their ability, even when other people doubt them. Even going back to that interview that we referenced. I think the other thing is, a very narrow gap between idea and execution. They have an idea about something. There's a lot of speed behind it. They make decisions very quickly. They tend to be very decisive and clear about what matters to them. And they strongly communicate that for kind of the results that they want. So you see in there's a lot of things we could probably underscore where we go, okay, it's self-belief, it's that narrow gap between idea and execution, it's speed, it's decisive decision-making, but it's also clarity about what they want, what matters to them, and being able to communicate that effectively to those around them and to those who are tasked with helping them kind of build that dream if it does involve more than just themselves.
One thing I've seen, and I want to talk to you about this, that a lot of leaders have, the exceptional ones anyway, that I've met, that they have a very hard pressure on themselves.
Sure.
And they're not always that nice to themselves. They're quite harsh.
Right.
Is that something, can be something bad too? I don't know. It's something at least I struggle with, that to find that balance of contempt and the future. You know what I mean there?
Yeah, I think that, leaders being hard on themselves is both a good and bad thing. So I'm not going to let you completely escape from that. I think that it keeps you in check and it keeps you with high expectations. So it's probably why, without that kind of pressure, you wouldn't have that kind of edge. Other people who don't contain that pressure don't particularly feel the same type of, performance expectation that you probably have for yourself. So I don't necessarily always think that it's inherently a bad thing unless you find yourself, kind of wounded by it in a way where, you put so much pressure that it prevents, for example, action. Sometimes people will carry perfectionistic tendencies that make them, they never release the product because it isn't good enough, or they become gun shy around certain things because the expectation on themselves is so high and so great. So, I think holding yourself to a high standard is a form of self-respect. It's a way of honoring yourself and your own potential, but you have to know when that moves a bit too far, and that's when you start to see, physical impacts. People can have headaches and all sorts of things secondary to the stress that they put on themselves. It's when you see business impacts where people are indecisive, or they end up, being gun shy about releasing certain products, or are not doing the things they need to do to move forward. So those are where I'd probably draw the line with it. But I see it overall as a fairly positive thing that can really work for you and help to catapult you because, you're setting the mark and the bar higher than other people.
And another aspect of that I've learned, that when you have very high standards and things doesn't go that way, or in the way you thought, or you don't achieve the goals you had and stuff like that, but the expectation people have at you is never at the level that you have on yourself.
True.
So you don't care as much either when people say things and think things.
Right.
And now when I'm thinking about it, that people that maybe do care a lot of what other people think is because of that they have lower expectations.
I think that's spot on. If you overvalue other people, you end up caring far too much about what they have to say or their opinions on something. And if you value yourself a bit more highly and you hold yourself to a higher standard than others, that's where the weight is going to rest. So it does end up working for you in social situations as well, or, on platforms like social media where, there are so many critics and very few doers. So you have to be, cautious on whose opinion you actually care about.
in Sweden, we have this thing, jante. You probably haven't heard of it.
I haven't.
And it's like very simple description is that you're not better than anyone else. And, it's very, all of us should be the same. And, and equalness is really, really important. And it's a lot of good stuff with that too, because equality and feminism and the rights for the LGBTQ and all of that stuff. But in the inward, journey, it can sometimes be, you can't really say that you're good or you're better, and that's kind of a big challenge for a lot of leaders here in Sweden.
I could see that, and I guess one thing that that comes to mind first is that, you're not inherently more valuable or less valuable than someone else. We're all equally valuable as human beings, but we don't all have equal skill sets, right? I mean, some people are going to be really good at one thing and someone's going to be really good at another, and the marketplace values different things differently. And I think it's okay. Like in Sweden, I assume, and in every other country, if you see a professional athlete playing soccer or, out there on the playing field, you don't say to yourself, oh, I could certainly play that well. Maybe some people do, but I don't say that. No. We understand that they have talents, they have gifts, they work hard. And the same is true in business, right? We're not equally skilled, but we are equal as people. I am not more valuable because of, something demographically about me or as a human being. But I would like to think that my skill set is probably more developed in some areas than others, and others probably have more development in theirs than me. So that's kind of how I reconcile that, and not kind of inflating that I'm better than anyone as a person. But hopefully you do have some skills that are really outstanding, and I think it's okay to be proud of those.
It's a good one. I like that thought because the challenge here is, I think, that when you have high expectations and you're leading a team, how do you get the team up to the same?
Right.
How do you create, what would you say, your experience and thoughts of creating a high-performing team?
Yeah, I think that when I think about high-performing teams, I think about what high-performing people want. And, high-performing people in their roles, they want autonomy, right? They want, high performers don't want to work under thumb. And that is true for high-performing teams. You have individuals there who do not want micromanagement. They want to be able to excel at what they're good at. I think they also don't want to be surrounded by people who are not high performers, right? So, cutting the C players, getting rid of people who are underperforming allows high performers to thrive. They want to see other high performing people on the team. It motivates them. It makes them excited. I also think that they appreciate people who are pretty upfront with what they expect, that they're direct, that they're open, and that there can be cultures where they have a shot. If they bring forward a great idea, that great ideas win. It isn't about ego. It's about ideas and effectiveness and where the needle can be moved. It's a team that can operate with very clear, kind of overarching parameters. If the best idea wins, everyone has a shot. They understand, what's valued, and they're surrounded by people who are all of a high caliber themselves. And you give them the autonomy to succeed and to see what they can do. I think that when I think about high-performing teams, that's really what I think of, is that, these are a group of individuals who are high performers themselves, and just considering what do high performers, what do they want? What do they value? What do they like? What do they need? And if you can think about it like that, they're just a cluster of individuals, then I think sometimes it's easier to think about what comprises a high-performing team.
If we zoom out in 2023 now, what would you say is the state of leadership right now?
I think it's really fragmented, honestly. I think that there's a lot of things that fragment it. I think one of them is that, 2023 is full of uncertainty. So I think how everyone's going to approach that uncertainty will be incredibly varied. So, the economic environment is very challenging. Even the work environment is very challenging for people. They're still, at least in America, they're certainly navigating, how much do we want to be remote? How much do we want to be in office? How
It's
do
the
you
same
navigate?
discussion here in Sweden too.
Okay. So like hybrid environments where you're there 2 days a week,
Yeah.
and then there are all different arrangements. I mean, some companies, they do quarterly offsites. So I think that, rather than the same cadence of what you expect from leadership, like you're in the office, you have certain types of meetings, you do, there's like this normal cadence we've been used to. And now all of that is up in the air. And in the backdrop, the economy is not particularly reliable or predictable. So I do think that people are finding their footing out there. And so I would say that leadership is fairly fragmented. Some people adjust better than others. Some you'll see that are pushing toward like, I want to go back to the way it was, and nothing is the way it was, right? The economy isn't the way it was. The state of office isn't the way it was. Your workers aren't the way that they were. So there are all of these challenges I think people face and kind of finding their footing and finding the new normal for them. So I feel like it's very fragmented in that way.
What advice would you give to leaders in this situation?
It depends on who you are, but navigating uncertainty generally for me, I think about a few different just kind of rules of operation. And one of the big rule for me is always having fast feedback loops. So if you're going to try, like you're somebody who's maybe more new to remote and you want to try having certain types of meetings or certain types of ways you're interacting with your team, always be getting feedback. Don't wait until it's end of the quarter and then realize, oh, this has been completely ineffective, or people don't really like X, Y, and Z, or, so you want fast feedback loops, not just with your people, but also with, things that you're doing in the business so that you're getting feedback that you can adjust to the economy as it shifts, so that you're able to make those changes quickly and you're not waiting till end of month or you're not waiting till end of quarter. When you realize that things, obviously you'll see that things are not going as planned earlier, but you'll get more granular details, be able to make adjustments more quickly. For me, anytime there's uncertainty, you want to create very, very fast feedback loops everywhere that you can, because it allows you to make adjustments more quickly. It allows you to see what's happening more quickly, and it just makes you more effective more quickly. So to me, that's like a fundamental kind of ground rule. Another one is just that you're always communicating. So be communicating even when it's a bit more vulnerable and saying, we're still figuring things out. I think it's okay to do that, and people understand that and they appreciate it rather than being, kind of wondering what's happening. Because if you allow people to just wander, they come up with their own conclusions rather than your own. And those are usually not advantageous to you.
So stay close to the people you coach or lead, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great way of phrasing it.
I think it will be, like you said, a challenging year. And during challenging times, and when people don't go the way you thought, you limit people the more, and you want to control more.
That's true. Good point.
And I think that leaders needs to be noticed about the danger of doing that, because what you said before is that high-performing people want autonomy.
Yeah.
And when you limit that autonomy, they will seek elsewhere for that autonomy.
You're right. And I think that the point that you make is absolutely spot on, that, when people feel stressed and they feel uncertain, their first instinct is to try to control it. Right. So, and that control comes through with micromanagement. It comes through in all of these dysfunctional ways. And that is absolutely destructive. So a great call out there. And I think that is exactly what a lot of people do when they're feeling a little uncertain and things are unpredictable, or that, like, for example, we see that even with remote employees, that one of the first things that you'll hear people talking about is, oh, I have to make sure they're working during these hours. Right. And what are you going to do? Are you going to monitor that they don't leave their computer screen? Or it's very strange. And then when people feel monitored, they feel like they're, clicking a box every second of the day, no one will want to work in that. And what's interesting to me, as somebody who's done work both within the work setting and now often with folks who are operating remotely, is that when people are in office, they're not working 24/7. They're having conversations, they're getting coffee, they aren't working 24/7 either. So when people are at home, really starting to have more broad and general metrics like, are the projects getting done? Are they getting done on time? Are you getting high quality work product? At the end of the day, those are the things that matter. So being able to be okay, letting go a bit just because they're not in eyesight or in view, that's an adjustment some people have to make.
I was thinking about that because the whole remote thing started off during the pandemic. And most companies were obviously totally fine with that. But in hindsight, it was not only because of the pandemic, because it was that most companies excelled during the pandemic. It was good times in the economy.
Right.
So no one was really questioning anything back then. But this time, we're still working at home or hybrid, but the economy is really bad.
Right.
So this time, you want to take people back to have the control, because if it was good times, you wouldn't think like this time. That's the thought.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. I think the other component of it is that now employers have more leverage.
That's the thing,
So now they can make these demands if they already have, office leases, or maybe it's their preference. They can demand more knowing that, my employees are going to want job security, and it's harder to find a job now than it might have been.
Exactly.
And so, the statistics
it's the
on LinkedIn.
employers' market now and not the employees.
Absolutely. The statistics on LinkedIn that we see are that for a very small amount of jobs that are fully remote, they're getting an incredible influx of applications. The ones that are more in person are getting quite a percentage lower. But, it's not for me to say. I think that different environments work better for different industries, and that some do benefit more greatly from having people in the office, and some are absolutely fine being fully remote. It's just how we're going to navigate that to have effective outcomes. I think that's really where the rubber meets the road.
I have two thoughts here that I've loved when I read and listened about you. And the first one is that when you talk about neutral events, can you explain that for the listeners and how to think about neutral events?
I don't believe that there are neutral events. I think that all events are meaningful in kind of some capacity. I think that we think that sometimes there are neutral events, but for me, I feel like there is nothing that is neutral. There is always something that kind of skews it one way or another, and there's always a way in which we can ingest that is meaningful. So for me personally, that's kind of how I see it. I think that a lot of times we will pass by events thinking that they're not important, but that we have to be intentional with how we direct the things that we're doing with our careers, with our businesses, and that in paying attention. And I think that that's the key. Really, is that I think we're very quick to let things pass by as being unimportant or not meaningful, but everything has some amount of meaning. And so making sure that you are intentional with the things that you do, with the way in which you're looking at events or interactions. They can be positive, negative, but I don't believe there is a true neutral, I guess. Do you believe that there's a true neutral?
No, that's because I love that when you talk about this, because we often just let things happen and don't really think so much about it. But everything that we go through in some way or another affect us, positively or negatively, but we don't give that so much time and thoughts of how it actually affected me and what I learned from this.
I truly believe that oftentimes, we emphasize the large decisions that we make, and I think those are very important, but it's the accumulation of small decisions that really lands us where we want to be. And, we think about small decisions as being small, but the way in which they stack will direct us in one way or another. And that's true whether it's, in your business, in your company, or it's at home, right? The little things matter, and they make all the difference in the quality of your organization or the quality of your life.
The second thing I want to talk about, which I love when I heard you talk about it, is reverse engineering. Can you explain that?
This is not a concept that I have spoken a lot about, only because I think that, I wish people would think about it more. But to me, it's a very straightforward way of making your career move faster with less mistakes. You look at people who have done what you want to do and how they got there, and literally map it out and start seeing kind of the pattern matching and the overlaps, and start directing your own course in similar ways. And sometimes, there's always a bit of, luck in people's careers, but I think that we position for luck, largely. So I don't really speak a lot about it, because I think that people often, a lot of people think that they do this and they don't do it as intentionally as they could. I literally mean that if you see someone doing a job that you like, or are in a position that you like, or going to a place you want to go to, that you map it backward and you say, where are the kind of big pivot points in this person's career? What are the areas in which they really were able to do things differently? People say that they want this, and then when they sometimes see some of those moves, they really don't want to replicate them. Usually they involve taking a big swing or a big chance or a big bet at some point, and that tends to be where people drop off.
Is it about the everyday hustle that people don't want to do, or is it why is that? What is your thoughts on that?
I think that almost all big endings require some big bets, and I think those are the hardest chances to take. Leaving a stable career where you make a good amount of money, even if you're in a company where you do very well and your company does well, being able to take it to the next level of operation sometimes means risking the consistent and good operation you currently have. It also means personal risks. Like, as a professional, you have a reputation, you have, people that you know. And so sometimes people don't want to take those risks because of social, I always say that people don't fear failure. They feel failing in public, or fear failing in front of other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true also. There's a lot of great ability to up-level your business and to take it to a kind of great place. But I think people get comfortable, and the risk involved in being great versus being really good is sometimes not worth, kind of those steps for most people. I don't know if it's always the day-to-day work, because at the very beginning, I think that's what keeps people from the very beginning out of early stages and early success. But I think once you have a bit of success, what keeps you from being great or kind of high levels of success are taking risks when you're very comfortable and you have a great life and things are very good and very stable. Because, will it change the quality of your life? Sometimes not so much. If you have $20 million, is having 40 really going to change your life? Probably not. If you have 40, is 60 really going to change your life? Probably not. But if you want to go for a really big swing and say, well, I want to have, $500 million net worth. Well, then that's going to involve a big swing. You're going to have to do something that really puts it on the line. And they're going to have to involve a certain level of risk. And some people are not going to want to take that when they have a fantastic life the way it is. So those are kind of there's challenges at all levels. I think at the initial levels, it's really the hard work. And then later, it's more of reputation and disrupting the great life that you already have.
I'm thinking about Wayne Gretzky. He said that it's funny, the more I shoot, the more I score.
Yeah, it's fantastic, right?
It's a good saying. If we're talking about and thinking about the driving factors of exceptional leaders, what is it that you see? Is it what is it that drives them that regular people don't lack of? Is it money or is it success? What is it that you see in them that drives them when you study?
I think at a certain level, money is really just a way of keeping score that people, kind of talk about, but I don't think it's the driver. I think that it may be the driver initially, but then it's about the things you can do. As one client told me, it's just about having more choices, right? Like you can make every amount of money will unlock a certain amount of choices in your life and what you can do, what you can have, where you can go. And having more of it unlocks more and bigger choices, better choices. And you'll see that, sometimes people have really specific goals. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, for example, he's always talked about buying the Jets, right? This American football team.
Yeah.
And, that's his goal. And, if I were to make a bet, I will say that he will be able to kind of meet that goal. And he's been working consistently for that goal. I don't think that it's about the money for him. He's an incredibly comfortable, financially comfortable person. I spoke with him earlier on in his career, not as a client, just, and having a conversation where, I spoke with him and he was, he's very clear about what he wants. And I do think that sometimes people have goals that are more than just money. It's about, a specific thing that either they want for themselves. It's about fulfilling their own potential. It's about knowing that you're able to do more and wanting to see that through and see that out. I think it's very hard for some people to be able to know that there's more in the tank and not really take advantage of that. And I see that when people become really comfortable, sometimes people will ask me, well, why are they still working? Like, if you have a few $100 million, why would you ever still be working? Why wouldn't you just drop out of life and do X, Y, and Z and just, spend time with your family and travel and do all of those things? And I think for them, it's part of who they are. It's part of their identity. It's also fun for them. They enjoy risk. They enjoy business. I think a lot of times they see it like a game. It's something that has consumed most of their life. I don't know that a lot of them can manage life without it. And I'll see people who have immense exits and, it's like, you hit the lottery, you have this incredible exit. And then because your whole life has been about work, you quote, retire for 2 months and then you're bored out of your mind and you don't know what you're going to do and you feel unfulfilled. And you'll find that most people will go back and they'll start doing something else. They'll found another company. They will become an investor. They'll find a way back in just because it's so much a part of who they are and it's consumed so much of their life and time. And I think it's part of their identity.
That's a good one. If I feel that I'm stuck as a leader, but I want to take steps and I want to evolve, what advice would you give me to take that next step and become the leader I want to be?
So it's your question is you're feeling a bit stuck, and I think I would probably ask, tell me a little bit about how you're feeling stuck and in what area, because that would determine what the next step would be. You got to I think that what you're saying is what I think a lot of people experience where they're feeling stuck. And I would say, are you feeling stuck because it's usually about progress of some sort. And people feel like they're not making progress on some front. And so I would want to check in and say, okay, if you're feeling stuck, tell me exactly how you're feeling stuck, in what area you're feeling stuck. And then that's where you would start to explore. So get really specific about it, because I think the thing that makes people paralyzed is that problems are vague and unspecific. And then they become overwhelming. So you have to really piece them out. If you're saying, I feel like, it's just like people say, I feel overwhelmed. Well, what's overwhelming? I have so much to do, right? Okay, so it's about tasks. Okay, so if you can continue to break things down, you can get to the heart of what you need to do to move it forward. All of being stuck is around not having progress. And I think when people are frustrated, to me, that's always a good sign. As soon as you kick into frustration, if you're sitting at home and you're frustrated, it's probably a great sign, because it means that internally you could be at a different place. You could be doing more, or you could be fulfilling more, or moving forward further ahead. So frustration is kind of the tell. It's kind of the red flag that tells you that, hey, like, you're flagging yourself right now because you could be doing more and you're not. So it's worth exploring that frustration. I think if you're stuck, get really specific about it. Where are you stuck? Where are you feeling stuck? Because that will tell you where to take the next steps.
So to wrap it up, Julie, I always ask my guests that if you could say something to yourself 10 years back, you go back 10 years, what would you say to Julie then?
I would like to be able to say to myself that I had a solid legacy of impact, even if it was largely behind the scenes. I think people, don't know who I am, and that's not a bad thing. But I like to think that my work is stamped everywhere, right? There are great companies out there that I feel incredibly proud of their success. There are athletes out there that I am incredibly proud of what they've accomplished or done. And so, you will help people do incredible things in the world, and you will find it deeply satisfying. And it will match with, who you are and personally. So just hang in, take the chance and follow it through. Because I think that you'll be really surprised at where you end up.
That's a good one. So it's 10 years in the future now, and Julie comes back to you now.
Oh, no.
What would she say to you now, would you think?
I hope that she would be able to say, if it's my future self coming back, that I've been able to scale my impact. It's something that, it's the part of the reason why I started the newsletter, because I feel like, only a certain amount of people will have access to, what I do. And I feel like sharing those lessons is incredibly important. So scaling, and I hope that future Julie will come back and say, you've really been able to scale impact to not only reach people who are doing great things or things at the top of their game, but the people who could best use those lessons, who are just starting out, who want to understand what it takes to scale or to grow or to move or how to think, that will help to open those doors for them. And I hope that she'll be able to tell me that my impact has scaled, reached a larger group of people, helped a larger group of people, and impacted not just individuals, but hopefully, kind of generations within their own family. For every one person you reach, that's a family system that you touch. And, if people start businesses, if they take chances they wouldn't have taken, if they can set up their families in ways that they wouldn't have imagined, then I will be incredibly proud if that's the case as we move ahead.
Great thoughts. The last question is that what's the most important thing you would say is to take away from this conversation for those who listen?
I think that one of the things that I've learned from sitting in the rooms with people who are operating at an incredibly high level is that if you take the time to think about the decisions you make, you don't know which one will be, like, for me, I don't know which meeting will be $1 million meeting, right? I don't know which time somebody is going to leave that room and make a decision that's going to push the bottom line in an incredibly significant way. But in your own life, you will have moments where that you may not realize that will be your kind of $1 million meeting, your $1 million decision, your big pivot points, that kind of choice in the road. And to pay attention to those moments and make them deliberately. Don't allow life to just kind of roll by. be intentional, think about where you want to go and think about what you want to do. And when these decisions come, spend the time it takes to make the right one, the right call, because you don't know when you're having that meeting yourself.
I love that. And I love to have you on the podcast, Julie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If people want to come to contact with you, what's the easiest way, would you say?
Probably the best way to contact me and the quickest. I am my own Twitter handle is usually a great way to reach me. I'm at Dr. Gurner, so at DrGurner. You can feel free. I leave my DMs open, so you can feel free to message me anytime and connect there. And also, you can certainly read more thoughts and more insights on Substack. I have the ultra successful newsletter on Substack. It comes out every week. And I'm excited to kind of offer insights there.
Thanks for you to be here in the CEO podcast. I love this, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much. It has been wonderful to speak with you, and I've really enjoyed your insights as well.
Ja, hörni, det är alltid lite sådär nervöst och ängsligt när man kör på engelska, men hoppas att ni hängde med och fick ut något relevant i det här avsnittet. För egen del så fanns det en hel del guldkorn och var en riktig sådär quote-maskin, och jag fick skriva ner en hel del saker i efterhand också. Men här är 2 större tankar som jag tycker är viktiga att ha med sig. För det första, det är de små besluten som tar oss dit vi vill. Ofta så fokuserar vi på det stora i livet. Det stora målet när vi når toppen av allt vi vill uppnå. Men inte på själva vägen eller stegen som faktiskt tar oss dit. Det som varje dag, steg för steg, leder oss fram. Enkelt att säga vart jag vill vara om ett år. Men vad behöver jag göra nästa minut för att komma dit? Det där är en sån himla viktig insikt och påminnelse som jag fick av det här samtalet. Det andra är att allt är ständigt under förändring. Du, jag, de som omger oss och vårt bolag. Som Julie sa, different requirements at different stages. Och precis så är det med ledarskapet. Den är inte statisk, men måste vara adaptiv för den tid man verkar i och för den omgivning man har. Jag tänker på farbrorn på gymmet som jag träffar ofta. En 82-åring som simmar varje dag. Och vi pratade om nuläget och om världen och allting som sker. Och det är krig och inflation och allt som är. Då sa han så här: det är jävliga tider, men det finns ingen annan trygghet än förmågan till anpassning. Över 60 års livsinsikt komprimerad i en enda mening som blev serverad på ett silverfat. Så är det för dig och mig och ledarskapet. Förmågan att ständigt anpassa sig. Stort tack till er som lyssnar på den här podden. Och supertack till alla er som också följer med i mitt nyhetsbrev. Numera faktiskt hundratals. Passerade precis 500 prenumeranter där. Varje månad så får jag ut ett nyhetsbrev med en exklusiv krönika för ledare runt om Sverige. Där jag skriver om ledarskap, tech, marknadsföring och annat smått och gott som kan få dig som ledare att alltid ligga i framkant och känna att du har nya idéer, du har inspiration och du är med i omvärldsbevakningen. Om du inte redan har signat upp dig så gör det med länken i det här avsnittet. Tack för att du lyssnar på VD-podden med mig, Araskelan. Så hörs vi snart igen för ett nytt magiskt avsnitt där denna person ska gästa oss.
Hej, Ali heter jag. Jag är VD på Gordon och i det här avsnittet av VD-podden så kommer du lyssna på mig och Arash prata om kulturbygge, vad det är och vad som har varit viktigt i ledarskap för mig för att bygga bolaget.
Den här podden produceras av Viva Media, en av Nordens ledande byråer inom marknadsföring med fokus på helheten.